Zara stood outside the big gate of her new school. It was tall, shiny, and clean. The sign above it said Hillstone Academy, one of the richest and most famous schools in the city. She held her old backpack tightly. Her shoes were clean but worn. Her clothes were neat but simple. As she walked through the halls, she noticed everything. Marble floors, gold lights, students wearing branded clothes and shiny shoes. No one looked like her. But Zara didn't care. She had come here to study, not to show off. She entered her classroom and quietly took the seat near the back. She opened her notebook and looked around. No one smiled at her. No one even said hello. Then he walked in. Brent. He had a shiny watch, hair styled perfectly, and an arrogant smile on his face. Everyone greeted him like he was the king. Some even stood up to give him a better seat. He looked at Zara and stopped. "What's that doing here?" he said loudly. Everyone turned to look. A few students snickered. One whispered, "Maybe she's in the wrong building." Zara stayed silent. She kept her head down and turned a page in her notebook. Brent walked toward her slowly. His voice was loud on purpose. "Hey," he said, standing next to her desk. "You lost or something?" Zara looked up. Her eyes were calm. "No," she said softly. "This is my class." Brent laughed. "Really? You look like someone who works outside the building, not studies in it." He suddenly pushed her bag off the table. It fell to the floor with a loud thump. Some papers slid out. A pencil rolled away. The room went quiet for a second. Then someone laughed. Another joined. And then the teacher walked in. But she didn't say anything about what just happened. She just looked at Zara, then turned to the board. Brent smirked and sat down in the front row. Zara slowly bent down, picked up her bag, and started gathering her papers. Her fingers shook a little, but her face stayed calm. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't complain. She quietly looked at Brent. Just for a moment. It wasn't an angry look. It wasn't a scared look. It was something different. Like she saw through him. Like she knew something he didn't. Brent saw her eyes and frowned a little, but then he quickly turned away and acted like he didn't care. The class began, but no one really paid attention. Everyone kept sneaking looks at Zara. Who was she? Why was she so quiet? And why? Did she not fight back? At lunch, Zara sat alone under a tree. She opened her lunchbox. Just a sandwich and a boiled egg. Some girls walked by and laughed. She brings food from home. Maybe she doesn't know we have a cafe inside. Zara heard it all. But she kept eating quietly. She watched the birds flying above. She watched the wind move the trees. She didn't hate anyone. But she didn't forget either. After school, while everyone left in fancy cars and shiny bikes, Zara waited near the side gate. A simple black car picked her up. The windows were dark. No one could see who was inside. Zara opened the door and sat quietly. "How was your first day?" the driver asked. Zara paused, then said softly, "I saw who they really are." The driver nodded and didn't ask anything more. They drove off slowly, leaving the school behind. But Zara's eyes looked out the window, back at the gate. She wasn't just a quiet girl. She was watching. And she was waiting. The next day, Zara entered the classroom early. She wanted to avoid the crowd. She sat in the same back seat, opened her notebook, and began to write. Her handwriting was neat. Her thoughts were clear. But around her, the storm was building. As soon as Brent walked in, the room changed. He saw Zara sitting quietly again, and it bothered him. She wasn't scared. She wasn't crying. She was just calm. That made him angry. "Still here?" Brent asked loudly, walking past her desk. Zara didn't look up. "Guess charity work is allowed now," he added, turning to the others. "Maybe she's here on a cleaning scholarship." Some students laughed. Others didn't, but they stayed quiet. No one wanted to go against Brent. He was rich. His dad funded the science lab. Even the teachers gave him special treatment. In the hallway, Brent made it worse. He followed Zora at a distance and made fun of her shoes. Are those even real? Or stitched at home? When she went to the library, he whispered behind her back, "Careful, she might steal the books." One day, he stood near the lockers and said loudly, "Anyone seen Zora's dad? I bet he parks the cars outside." Zora heard everything, every word, but she never said a thing. At home, she didn't complain. She simply ate dinner, finished her homework, and sat beside her father on the couch. Her father, tall and quiet, would sometimes look at her. He could see it in her eyes. Something had changed, but she didn't say it. Not yet. He gave her space. He trusted her strength. But deep down, he was watching. Back at school, the bullying got creative. Brent once took her water bottle and filled it with ketchup. He threw her homework in the trash when the teacher wasn't looking. One time, he tripped her in the hallway. She fell. Her books scattered. Students laughed again. Zara stood up slowly. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply gathered her things and walked away. But that day, something was different. That evening, when her father picked her up, she opened her bag and pulled out a piece of torn homework. "This was my science paper," she said softly. Her father looked at it. He saw Brent's name scribbled in one corner. He didn't say anything. He took the paper, folded it, and put it in his coat pocket. Zora looked at him and asked, "Will you do something?" He smiled gently. "Yes, but not today." Zara nodded. She trusted him. The next morning at school, something unexpected happened. A substitute teacher walked in. "Your regular teacher is out today," the woman said. "I'll be with you for the week." She looked different. Sharp eyes, straight posture, quiet but firm voice. She noticed Brent talking too much. She noticed Zora sitting alone. And she noticed the silence in the room when Zora stood to speak. After class, the teacher called Zora to her desk. "I see what's happening," she said kindly, "and I want you to know. I'm watching." Zora looked into her eyes. It was the first time someone had said that. She gave a tiny nod. The teacher smiled. "Good, now go show them who you are." That day, Zora didn't walk away when Brent mocked her lunch. She just stared at him. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence was stronger than his noise. The students noticed. One of the girls, Leah, came and sat beside her during lunch. "I like your lunch," Leah said. "My mom makes something similar." Zora smiled, just a little. It was the start of something small, but important. Brent saw it, and it made him nervous. He didn't like losing control. He didn't like her silence. He didn't like that she wasn't breaking. So he planned something bigger, something cruel. But he didn't know one thing. Zora's strength came from more than silence. It came from the man waiting in the shadows. And soon, that man would step into the light. Zora's father was a quiet man. He wore plain clothes, drove a simple black car, and never spoke much. But there was something powerful about him, like he carried stories no one dared to ask about. He picked Zora up from school every day. Always on time, always calm. But no one at the school knew who he really was. One day, as Zora waited by the school gate, Brent passed by in his shiny car. He stopped and looked at her through the window. "That your dad?" He smirked. "He looks like a driver." Zora didn't answer. Brent laughed, zoomed off, and didn't look back. Later that evening, as Zora sat at the dinner table, she looked at her father. He was reading quietly, sipping tea. "Dad," she asked softly, "why don't you ever come inside the school?" Her father looked up. His eyes were warm, but serious. "Because my time will come," he said. "When I enter, they will remember it forever." Zora blinked. "What do you mean?" He gave a gentle smile. "You'll see." She didn't ask again, But she remembered every word. The next morning, things took a sharp turn. Brent had a new idea. This time, he brought a fake letter to school, pretending it was from Zara's dad. He passed it around the class. "Look at this," Brent said, laughing. "He says he's a security officer. Maybe he guards parking lots." The class laughed. The teacher didn't notice. Zara's face went red, but not from shame, from anger. That was the first time she spoke back. "That letter is fake," she said. Brent turned. "What did you say?" "I said it's fake," Zara repeated, clearly. "And one day, you'll wish you never made fun of him." Brent smirked. "What's he gonna do? Sweep me with a broom?" Zara stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. "My father isn't what you think." Brent laughed louder. "No? Then who is he?" "The president." Zara didn't answer. She just picked up her bag and left the class. At home, her father noticed her eyes were different. She was no longer just hurt, she was angry, but she was still in control. That night, he made a call. Only a few words. Only one instruction. And the next day, everything changed. Zara entered school as usual, head held high. But this time, something was different. By lunchtime, whispers had started. "Did you see the car outside? Who are those people in suits? There's a man in the principal's office." And everyone's standing. Students gathered at the windows. A large black SUV had pulled up to the front gate. Several men in suits were standing outside. They weren't regular security. They looked like they belonged to someone important, someone powerful. Brent tried to act cool. "It's probably a guest speaker or something," he said. "Relax." But deep inside, he was uneasy. Then it happened. The door to the class opened. The principal entered, looking nervous. Behind him, Zara's father. He wasn't wearing his regular clothes. Today, he wore a sharp black suit. His walk was silent, but strong. His eyes were calm, but commanding. And on his chest was a badge. Not just any badge. It was from the National Intelligence Unit. The room went silent. Dead silent. Zara stood up, calm as ever. Her father looked at Brent. Then, without shouting or threatening, he spoke one line. "You thought she was alone. You were wrong." The principal turned pale. The students froze, and Brent didn't know what to say. The man everyone thought was just a driver was someone more powerful than anyone in that school. The truth was finally out, and the balance had shifted. After Zara's father walked into that classroom, nothing felt the same. The air had changed. The silence he left behind was louder than 1,000 words. Brent sat frozen, his usual smirk gone. He had joked, mocked, and humiliated Zara for days. But now, for the first time, he realized he had no idea who she really was. And her father, he wasn't just powerful. He was dangerous in silence. The principal followed him out like a nervous shadow. Teachers were now whispering in corners. Students looked at Zara with wide eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. But Zara didn't act different. She still walked slowly, quietly. She didn't gloat. She didn't brag. She simply sat in her usual seat and took out her notebook. Later that day, Brent tried to act normal. "Ketch, so what? He's just some secret agent or something," he muttered to his friends. But even his voice shook. No one replied, not even his closest friend. Zara's strength had spread through the school like fire through dry grass. She had said nothing for days, yet somehow she had shaken the entire building. And her father, he didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to threaten. His presence alone had exposed the truth. Brent began to feel it. The stares, the cold shoulders. People had seen who he really was too, not a leader, but a coward who attacked the quietest one in the room. The next day, the school held an emergency assembly. The principal walked onto the stage looking embarrassed. "I want to speak about respect," he began, avoiding eye contact with anyone. "This school is a place of learning. It must be safe for every student, no matter who they are or where they come from." Everyone knew who he meant. Without using names, he was talking about Zora and Brent. Zara sat in the front row, eyes forward. Brent was in the back, staring at the floor. Then something unexpected happened. After the assembly, the principal invited Zora and her father to the office. Brent tried to follow them. The principal stopped him. "Not this time," he said firmly. Inside the office, Zora's father sat across the table, calm, composed, watching. The principal cleared his throat. "Mr. Khan," he said, "I want to personally apologize for how your daughter was treated. This shouldn't have happened." Zora's father didn't blink. "I agree," he replied softly, "but apologies mean nothing without change." The principal nodded quickly. Yes. We're reviewing our bullying policy. We'll be holding training for the staff. And we've spoken to the student responsible." Zara stayed quiet. Then her father said something that shocked the principal. "I don't want him punished." The principal looked confused. "You don't?" Zora's father shook his head. "I want him educated. Humiliation is what created this problem. It won't fix it." Zora looked at her dad with quiet pride. He wasn't just strong. He was wise. Outside the office, Brent stood waiting. He thought he was about to get expelled. But when Zara and her father walked past him, they didn't even look at him. Zora paused for one moment, then whispered, "This is your chance to be better. Don't waste it." Brent stood speechless. He had destroyed her homework, pushed her down, laughed at her lunch. But now, she was giving him a second chance. Why? Because she was raised by a man who understood real power. Not loud, not violent. Real power was quiet. It didn't need to shout. It just walked in and changed the whole room. From that day, everything shifted. Brent didn't speak for the rest of the week. Zara had more students sitting with her at lunch. Leah, one of the girls who had once laughed at her, now brought 2 sandwiches, one for herself and one for Zara. "You're stronger than anyone here," Leah said softly. Zara smiled, but inside she knew. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Because when the world tries to crush a quiet soul, and that soul stands tall anyway, that's when the real storm begins. Days passed, but the memory of that moment, when Zara's father walked into the classroom, never faded. It became a story, a legend. Students whispered about it between classes. Some said he was a spy. Others believed he trained elite forces. No one really knew the full truth. But everyone agreed on one thing. Zara was no longer the quiet girl. She was respected. Not because she shouted, not because she fought back, but because she stayed calm, and her truth did the talking. Something strange began to happen at school after that day. The teachers started acting differently. Mr. Paul, who used to ignore bullying, now paused to look around the room more often. He actually watched the students. Mrs. Hill, who once said nothing when Zara got pushed, now greeted her with warmth every morning. Even the hallways felt different. The students who used to walk by Zara without a word now gave her small smiles. Some nodded. Some looked embarrassed. Zara didn't change her walk. She didn't speak louder. She still carried her old backpack, wore her same simple clothes, and took notes in her worn-out notebook. But her silence now carried weight. Even Brent changed. He no longer laughed the loudest in class. He no longer walked like he owned the school. In fact, he kept to himself, avoiding Zara, keeping his head down, quiet for the first time in years. One day, he left a small note on her desk. It read, "I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were, but now I do. You didn't deserve it. I'll be better." Zara read the note once. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She folded it and placed it in her book. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. but it meant moving forward. At home, her father noticed the change too. He saw it in the way Zara walked through the door, taller, stronger. "You feel different," he said over dinner. Zara looked at him. "I feel like they see me now," she replied. Her father gave a small nod. "They see what I've always seen." Then something surprising happened. The school sent a letter home. It invited Zora's father to speak at the upcoming Leaders of the Future event. They wanted him to share his story with students and parents. Zora was shocked. "Dad, you don't like public events." "I don't," he said. "But maybe it's time." Zora looked nervous. "What will you tell them?" Her father smiled. "The truth, that the strongest people are not always the loudest, and that real respect comes from how we treat others, when no one is watching." The event day arrived. The school auditorium was full. Parents, students, teachers, even the board members. Zara sat in the front row, heart pounding. Then her father stepped onto the stage. He wore his suit again. No flashy medals, no long speech, just calm, steady eyes. He spoke simply. "I am the father of a quiet girl, a girl many ignored, mocked, or dismissed. But I never worried, because I knew what she was made of." He paused. "I work in places most people never see. I protect people who can't protect themselves. But the person I admire most is my daughter." The room went silent. He continued. "She didn't fight with anger. She didn't shout. She stood tall in silence and let the truth speak for her. That is power." Tears welled in Zora's eyes. People began to clap. Not polite claps. Real, strong, emotional applause. Zara's father nodded once, then stepped down. And just like that, the school changed forever. Not because of a punishment, not because of fear, but because one girl and one father showed them what quiet strength looks like. The next morning, the school felt different again. Something had settled into the air, like peace after a storm. Everyone had heard Zora's father speak, and everyone was still thinking about his words. Even the walls seemed quieter. Even the loud students acted more calm. No one looked at Zora the same way anymore, not with pity, not with confusion, not with judgment. They looked at her with respect, real respect, and not because of what her father did, but because of what she didn't do. She didn't fight back with hate. She didn't scream or complain. She didn't beg for help. She stood tall, stayed calm, and let the truth reveal itself. That, in itself, was power. Mr. Paul started his morning class differently. He cleared his throat, nervous, and looked around. "I want to begin by saying I've learned something. From one of you." He didn't say Zora's name, but everyone knew who he meant. "I've been a teacher for a long time," he continued. "But sometimes, even teachers forget how to listen." He paused. "From now on, this classroom will be different. If someone makes fun of another student, they will answer to me. I won't be silent anymore." Zora looked down at her notebook. She felt her eyes get wet, but she blinked the tears away. She didn't want pity. She wanted peace. In the lunchroom, a group of younger students came up to her. They were shy, holding their trays, unsure if they could sit beside her. She smiled and moved over. They sat with her quietly, watching her like she was a hero. Not because she fought, but because she forgave. Zora's father picked her up from school that day. He noticed something new. Parents outside the school gave respectful nods. A few even came up to shake his hand. "Sir, your words moved us. You raised an incredible daughter." He simply nodded. At home, Zora asked her father a question that had been sitting in her heart all day. "Do you think people really change?" He looked at her for a moment. "Some do, some don't. But if even one person changes, it was worth it." She smiled. Then she asked, "What if Brent never says sorry to me?" Her father replied, "Then that's his journey. Not yours. You already won when you chose not to become like him. Zara nodded slowly. That night, something unexpected happened. There was a knock at their door. Zara opened it, and Brent was standing there, alone. No friends, no phone in hand to record it. Just him, holding a paper bag. "Hi," he said quietly. "I didn't come to bother you. I wanted to return something." He pulled out a book. It was the one he had torn weeks ago, Zara's favorite. She looked at it. It had been taped, mended carefully, page by page. "I stayed up fixing it," he said, looking down. "I know it doesn't change what I did, but I wanted to try." Zara held the book and smiled faintly. "Thank you." Brent started to walk away, then stopped. "Zara," he said, voice low, "your father scared me that day, but not because of how he looked, because of how calm he was. I wish my dad was like that." Zara didn't reply right away. Then softly, she said, "You can be like him, if you really want to." Brent nodded slowly, then left. Zara closed the door and leaned on it. Her father watched from the living room. "You didn't just teach your school," he said. "You taught him too." Zara smiled. She had come into that school as a quiet girl with an old backpack. Now she was the one everyone listened to. Not because of noise, but because of grace. It had been a few weeks, but the effects of Zara's quiet strength still touched every corner of the school. No one bullied the quiet kids anymore. No one laughed at old shoes or torn notebooks. The teachers were more alert, more kind, more human. And the students, they had learned something deep. That you never really know who someone is until life reveals their truth. Zara never wanted to be famous. She didn't want awards or praise. She only wanted to learn in peace, without being judged for how she looked, or how she spoke, or where she came from. But now she was more than just a student. She had become a symbol of quiet strength, of dignity, of inner power. One day, during morning assembly, the school principal stood at the podium. She cleared her throat, and everyone fell silent. "I've been in this school for over 10 years, she began, "but rarely do I see a student teach an entire institution a lesson." She paused, looking toward Zara. Zara didn't shout. She didn't complain. She didn't fight with fists or harsh words. She simply stood in truth and let her strength speak louder than any insult ever could. There was silence in the hall. Then slowly, people began to clap. Not just the students, not just the teachers, even the janitor, even the cafeteria staff. Everyone stood. It wasn't a loud standing ovation. It was slow, respectful, real. Zara's heart beat fast. She hadn't asked for this, but she accepted it, with grace. Later that day, her father came to pick her up, as he always did. But this time, as they walked out of the school gates, people stopped to greet him. One teacher said, "Thank you for showing us what a real parent looks like." Another whispered, "Your daughter changed this school more than we ever could." Her father smiled gently but said only one thing. "She didn't change it because of me. She changed it by being herself." At home, Zara looked at herself in the mirror. Same face, same hair, same clothes, but something inside had changed. She had faced hate and didn't return it. She had been disrespected and stayed respectful. She had been pushed down and got back up without anger. That was true power. Her father walked by the doorway and saw her standing there. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" he asked. Zara nodded. "Yes, I think I'm ready for anything now." He smiled. And then he said something she would never forget. "Sometimes the world sees quiet as weakness, but the strongest soldiers don't always carry weapons. Some carry truth, and some carry peace." Zora looked at him, and then out the window. A new day was coming, and the quiet girl who had once been pushed around. She was now the quiet hero in every heart, In every hallway, in every memory, her silence had spoken louder than any voice. And the world had listened.